Dr. Lisa Carter wiped the sweat from her forehead as she checked the lab readings for the third time that morning. The Deep Space Research Station New Horizon hummed quietly around her as it orbited the distant moon of Kepler Prime. She had been studying alien plant samples for 6 months now, and the work was getting lonely. The station was home to only 12 humans, and they were the furthest human outpost from Earth. Lisa often wondered why she had volunteered for such an isolated assignment. But the chance to study unknown life forms had been too tempting to pass up. Captain Amy Brooks walked into the lab carrying a steaming cup of coffee and looking worried. Lisa could tell something was bothering her boss. The captain was usually calm and collected, but today she seemed nervous. Lisa, something showed up on our long-range scanners early this morning, Amy said, setting down her coffee. It looks like a small ship, but the design does not match any known human or Alliance vessels. Lisa looked up from her microscope. That sounds interesting. Where is it now? About 2 hours away from our position and moving very slowly. Amy replied, it appears to be damaged. The hull is showing signs of impact damage and we are not getting any response to our communication attempts. Should we go check it out? Lisa asked, already knowing the answer. Amy was the type of captain who would never leave anyone stranded in space, regardless of who they were already planning on it. Amy said with a small smile, we leave in 20 minutes. If you want to come along, Dr. Sullivan is preparing the medical bay just in case we find survivors. Lisa quickly saved her work and grabbed her emergency kit. The chance to meet actual alien life forms was something she had dreamed about since becoming a xenobiologist. She had studied hundreds of samples and theoretical data, but had never encountered living alien beings. The shuttle ride to the damaged ship took just over an hour. Lisa spent the time reviewing what little they knew about the vessel. The ship appeared to be made from some kind of crystalline material that their scanners could barely penetrate. The energy readings were unlike anything in human databases. When they reached the ship, Lisa gasped at what she saw through the shuttle window. The vessel looked like it had been grown rather than built. Its smooth curves and translucent walls reminded her of a giant seashell. The damage along one side showed where something had torn through the Amy maneuvered the shuttle close to an airlock that seemed intact. They could see movement inside through the transparent walls. 2 figures were moving slowly near what appeared to be the ship's control center. Lisa watched the aliens with fascination. They were tall and slender, with elongated limbs that moved with an elegant grace. Their skin had a pale blue tint and seemed to shimmer slightly in the ship's internal lighting. Long silver hair flowed down their backs, and their faces had sharp, angular features that were both alien and beautiful. One of the aliens noticed their shuttle and pointed in their direction. The creature moved to what looked like a communication panel and began touching symbols that glowed under its fingers. Our translator is picking up basic mathematical concepts, Amy said, listening to her headset. They are trying to establish communication using universal constants. Lisa watched as the aliens continued their attempts to communicate. One of them appeared to be injured and was being supported by the other. The wounded alien was clearly in distress, and Lisa could see it was having trouble standing. We need to help them, Lisa said without thinking. They are hurt and probably running out of supplies. Amy nodded, but looked concerned. The first contact protocols are very clear about this situation. We should contact headquarters and wait for instructions. But they might not have time to wait, Lisa replied. She could see the injured alien was getting weaker. The creature kept stumbling, and its companion was struggling to keep it upright. Me made the decision that would change everything. She opened a communication channel and began transmitting basic mathematical sequences followed by images, showing their intention to help. The aliens responded quickly with what appeared to be acceptance. The docking process took almost an hour because the alien airlocks were not compatible with human equipment. Amy had to use emergency boarding techniques to create a seal between the ships. When they finally made contact, Lisa was surprised by how Earth-like the atmosphere inside the alien vessel was. The 2 aliens were waiting for them near the airlock. The injured one was leaning heavily against the wall, and Lisa could see it was much worse than she had thought. The creature was extremely thin, and its skin had lost most of its shimmer. Its breathing was labored, and its movements were weak. The healthy alien stepped forward and made a series of gestures that seemed peaceful. It pointed to itself and made a sound that sounded like Velandra. Then it pointed to its injured companion and said something that sounded like Zixthera. Lisa stepped forward slowly and pointed to herself. Lisa, she said clearly. Then she pointed to Amy and said Amy. The aliens repeated the names carefully and seemed to understand the concept. Andra began speaking rapidly while pointing to Zixthara and then to their damaged ship. Lisa could not understand the words, but the meaning was clear. They had been traveling for a long time and were running out of supplies. Zixthera was sick and needed help. Dar Sullivan arrived with her medical equipment and began scanning Zixthera with her instruments. The alien allowed the examination, but kept watching Lisa with large dark eyes that seemed both intelligent and desperate. The medical readings are strange, Dr. Sullivan said quietly to Lisa. This creature appears to be suffering from severe malnutrition, but the biochemistry is unlike anything I have seen before. Lisa studied Zixthera more carefully. The alien's condition reminded her of the malnutrition cases she had read about in her medical training. The sunken cheeks, the weak movements, and the dull skin were all signs she recognized. Can we bring them back to the station? Lisa asked. Amy considered the request for a moment. The first contact protocols said they should wait for headquarters approval, but she could see that Zixthara was getting worse by the minute. We have to help them. Amy decided they will not survive much longer without proper care. The trip back to New Horizon took another hour. During the flight, Lisa sat with the two aliens and tried to learn more about them. Using simple drawings and gestures, she discovered that they had been traveling for many weeks. Their ship had been damaged in some kind of accident, and they had been drifting with limited supplies. Andra showed Lisa images on a small device that appeared to be some kind of datapad. The pictures showed their homeworld, which looked like a crystal city built into tall mountain peaks. The aliens themselves appeared to be part of a larger society that valued beauty and harmony. But when Lisa asked about food, Andra looked confused. The alien showed her packages of what looked like gray paste and indicated that this was what they ate. Lisa was shocked. The paste looked completely unappetizing, and she wondered how any intelligent species could survive on such bland sustenance. Once they reached New Horizon, Lisa helped get Zixthera to the medical bay. The alien was now too weak to walk and had to be carried. Amy began the complex process of reporting their discovery to Earth headquarters while Dr. Sullivan worked to understand the aliens' biology. Lisa found herself thinking about her grandmother, who had always said that good food could cure almost anything. She remembered the countless times her grandmother had made chicken soup when Lisa was sick, and how much better it had always made her feel. Looking at Zixthara's weakened condition, Lisa made a decision that would change the course of galactic history. She was going to make chicken soup for an alien. Lisa spent the next morning in the station kitchen, adapting her grandmother's chicken soup recipe. She had to substitute several ingredients because they needed to be safe for alien biology. Dr. Sullivan had run tests on Velandra and found that their digestive systems could process most human foods. The kitchen smelled wonderful as Lisa chopped vegetables and prepared the broth. She used synthetic chicken protein that was designed for long space missions, along with carrots, onions, and celery that grew in the station's hydroponic gardens. The familiar process of cooking made her feel closer to home. Andra watched with intense curiosity as Lisa worked. The alien had never seen food being prepared this way. On their homeworld, everything came from machines as pre-processed paste. Andra asked many questions through the basic translation device they had managed to set up. Why do you heat the water, Andra asked, as Lisa brought the pot to a boil. It makes the flavors mix together, Lisa explained, stirring the soup. The heat breaks down the vegetables and makes them easier to digest. It also kills any harmful bacteria. Andra tilted her head in confusion. Bacteria? Lisa realized she was dealing with beings who had no concept of cooking or food preparation. She tried to explain using simple terms and gestures how heating food made it safer and more nutritious. The alien listened with growing fascination. When the soup was ready, Lisa carefully carried a bowl to the medical bay, where Zixthera was resting. The injured alien had been getting weaker, despite Dr. Sullivan's best efforts with human medical equipment. Lisa hoped her grandmother's recipe might help, where advanced technology had failed. Zixthera looked up weakly. As Lisa approached, the alien's large dark eyes showed a mixture of curiosity and wariness when Lisa offered the bowl of soup. The smell seemed to interest Zixthera, who lifted her head slightly. Lisa demonstrated by taking a small sip of the soup herself, then offered the spoon to Zixthera. The alien hesitated for a moment before accepting the spoon and taking a tiny taste. The effect was immediate. Zixthera's eyes widened, and she made a soft sound that seemed to indicate surprise. She took another spoonful and then another. Lisa watched with growing excitement as the alien began to eat with more enthusiasm. Andra rushed into the medical bay when she heard the sound Zixthera was making. She stopped short when she saw her companion eating from the bowl. Her own eyes went wide with shock and wonder. What is happening to her? Velindra asked through the translator. She is enjoying the food, Lisa said with a smile. Food is not just for nutrition, it can bring pleasure and comfort. This concept seemed revolutionary to both aliens. They had lived their entire lives consuming flavorless paste that provided only basic nutrients. The idea that eating could be enjoyable was completely foreign to them. Over the next few days, Zixthera improved dramatically. The alien went from barely being able to sit up to walking around the medical bay. Dr. Sullivan was amazed by the rapid recovery and ran countless tests trying to understand what was happening. The soup contains nutrients that their paste lacks, Dr. Sullivan explained to Captain Amy. The aliens have been surviving on the absolute minimum requirements for their species, but Lisa's soup is providing things their bodies have been craving. Lisa began teaching both aliens how to prepare simple meals in the station kitchen. Andra showed remarkable talent for cooking and seemed to have natural instincts about flavors and combinations. Zixthera was still recovering but watched every lesson with intense interest. The transformation in both aliens was remarkable. They began laughing, something they had apparently not done in years. Their skin regained its shimmer, and their movements became more graceful and energetic. Even their voices seemed stronger when they spoke. Lisa learned more about their society through these cooking lessons. The aliens came from a world called Kathoros, where efficiency had been valued above all else centuries ago. Their people had given up cooking in favor of processed nutrition. Their culture had become focused on productivity and had lost many of its artistic traditions. We used to sing while we worked, Valandra explained sadly as she stirred a pot of vegetable stew. But singing was considered inefficient, so we stopped. Lisa encouraged her to sing anyway, and was delighted when Valandra began humming a melody while she cooked. Zixthera joined in from her chair, and soon the kitchen was filled with beautiful, alien harmonies. The other crew members began visiting the kitchen too. Watch the cooking lessons, Dr. Kate Sullivan. The chief medical officer was fascinated by the aliens' rapid improvement. Captain Amy was pleased to see how well the first contact was going, but their peaceful routine was interrupted when Commander Beth Taylor arrived on a scheduled inspection ship. Lisa was in the kitchen with both aliens when the commander's shuttle docked. She watched through the porthole as official-looking people in Galactic Council uniforms came aboard. Captain Amy met Lisa in the corridor with a worried expression. The inspection team is here early, she said quietly. They are asking questions about our guests. Lisa felt a chill of fear. She knew that first contact protocols were very strict about cultural contamination. The Galactic Council had rules about sharing human customs with alien species. Dr. Nina Wright, the cultural anthropologist who came with the inspection team, was particularly interested in the aliens. Lisa tried to act casual when she introduced Zixthera and Valandra, but Dr. Wright noticed things that made her suspicious. Their health has improved remarkably since their arrival. Dr. Wright observed, looking at her medical scanner. How did you achieve such rapid recovery? There, Sullivan provided the medical care, Lisa said carefully, avoiding mention of the cooking lessons there. Wright nodded, but continued to study the aliens with a critical eye. She made notes on her datapad and asked more questions about their daily routine. Lisa tried to answer, without revealing anything about the food preparation that evening. Lisa had to warn the aliens about the dangers they faced. The Galactic Council has strict rules about cultural sharing, she explained to Velandra and Zixthera. If they discover that I taught you to cook, we could all be in serious trouble. But why is learning to cook dangerous? Thora asked. The translator was getting better at handling complex concepts, and Lisa could hear the confusion in the alien's voice. The Council believes that sharing cultural practices between species can cause problems, Lisa said, trying to explain concepts that seemed ridiculous even to her. They think it corrupts natural development. Valandra looked angry. This is foolish. Our people have forgotten how to live. We survive, but we do not live. Lisa agreed, but she knew the law was the law. For the next few days, while the inspection team was aboard, she had to pretend that the aliens were just medical patients. The kitchen lessons stopped, and the aliens had to eat processed rations again. The change in Zixthera and Vel Andra was immediate and heartbreaking. They became quiet and withdrawn again. Their skin lost some of its shimmer, and they stopped singing. Lisa watched them return to the pale shadows they had been when she first met them. Commander Taylor seemed satisfied with her inspection and prepared to leave, but Dr. Wright lingered, asking more questions and studying the aliens' behavior. Lisa could tell the anthropologist suspected something but could not prove anything. The night before the inspection team was scheduled to depart, Lisa made a decision that would change everything. She quietly prepared one more pot of soup and brought it to the aliens' quarters. We may not get another chance, she told them, as they eagerly accepted the bowls. Whatever happens, I want you to remember that food can be about more than just survival. As they ate, Lisa taught them one final lesson about cooking. She showed them how to remember recipes and how to adapt them using different ingredients. She hoped that somehow they would be able to use this knowledge if they ever returned to their home world. The inspection team left the next morning, but Lisa knew their troubles were just beginning. Dr. Wright had been too interested and too suspicious. Something told Lisa that this was not the end of their investigation. 3 days later, Captain Amy received a priority message from Earth headquarters. A full Galactic Council investigation team was being dispatched to New Horizon. Lisa Carter was to be held for questioning regarding possible cultural contamination charges. Lisa looked out at the stars and wondered how making soup for a sick alien had become a galactic crime. But she also looked at Zixthera and Velandra, who were healthy and happy and singing again, and knew she would make the same choice every time. The real battle was just beginning. The Galactic Council investigation ship arrived at New Horizon. Like a storm cloud blocking out the stars, Lisa watched from the observation deck as the massive vessel docked with their small research station. She knew her life was about to change forever. Judge Prime Kelthonis led the investigation team and brought with him enough legal authority to shut down the entire station. The alien judge was a tall gray being with multiple arms and eyes that seemed to see everything at once. His reputation for enforcing cultural preservation laws was legendary throughout the galaxy. Agent Claire Martinez was the human representative on the team, and Lisa had hoped she might be sympathetic, but Agent Martinez wore the stern expression of someone who took the law very seriously. She carried recording equipment and legal scanners that could detect traces of cultural contamination. Dar Rose Hamilton, the station's communications officer, tried to warn Lisa about what was coming. The investigation team has been reviewing all our transmissions, she said quietly. They know something happened here, but they do not have proof yet. Lisa felt sick to her stomach. She had hidden the cooking equipment and destroyed most of the evidence, but she knew that determined investigators could find traces of what had happened. The modified kitchen tools would be hard to explain, and the alien-compatible ingredients were still in storage. Captain Amy called a meeting in the main conference room. Judge Calthanus spread his multiple arms on the table and fixed his many eyes on each person present. His voice was cold and mechanical when he spoke through the universal translator. "We are here to investigate allegations of cultural contamination," he announced. "The Galactic Council has reason to believe that forbidden practices have been shared between human and alien species." Lisa tried to keep her expression neutral, but her heart was pounding. She glanced at Zixthera and Velandra, who were sitting quietly. At the end of the table, both aliens looked nervous and kept exchanging worried glances. Agent Martinez activated her recording equipment and began asking questions about the aliens' rescue and recovery. She was particularly interested in how quickly Zixthera had improved from her malnutrition. The medical records show remarkable improvement in a very short time, Agent Martinez said, reading from her datapad. "What treatment methods were used?" Dar Sullivan answered carefully, describing the standard medical procedures and nutrient supplements. She avoided any mention of the soup or cooking lessons, but Lisa could tell the agent was not satisfied with the explanation. Judge Calthanus turned his attention to the aliens themselves. He asked them directly about their time on the station and what activities they had participated in. Zixthera and Velandra answered honestly about their medical treatment and recovery, but they also avoided mentioning the food preparation. The investigation team spent 3 days searching every part of the station. Lisa watched nervously as they examined the kitchen area with specialized equipment. Agent Martinez found traces of alien-compatible seasonings in the food preparation area. "These ingredients are not standard for human consumption," Agent Martinez announced, holding up a scanner that was beeping rapidly. "Why would they be present in your kitchen?" Captain Amy tried to explain that they had been experimenting with alien nutrition to help with Zixthera's recovery, but the explanation sounded weak even to Lisa. The amounts and types of ingredients suggested much more than simple medical nutrition. And the 4th day of the investigation, Dr. Rose Hamilton made a terrible mistake. She was nervous about all the questioning and accidentally activated a security recording that she thought had been deleted. The recording showed Lisa teaching Velandra how to chop vegetables while Zixthera watched from a chair nearby. Agent Martinez played the recording for the entire investigation team. The image was clear and undeniable. Lisa was demonstrating knife techniques, while Velandra mimicked her movements. Both aliens were clearly enjoying the lesson and learning human food preparation methods. Judge Calthanus rose to his full height when he saw the recording, his multiple eyes focused on Lisa with an intensity that made her feel like she was being examined under a microscope. The alien's expression was unreadable, but Lisa could sense his anger. "This is a clear violation of Cultural Preservation Law, Section 12, he declared. "Cultural contamination of a protected species is a Class Alpha offense, punishable by exile and memory adjustment." Melissa felt the blood drain from her face. Memory adjustment was a punishment that would erase parts of her mind, leaving her unable to remember her scientific training or her time in space. It was considered worse than death by many people. Agent Martinez continued searching and found more evidence hidden in the food storage area were cooking implements that had been modified for alien physiology. She discovered spice combinations that had been tested for alien digestive systems. The evidence painted a clear picture of systematic cultural sharing. But the worst discovery came when Agent Martinez found video logs that Dr. Rose Hamilton had been keeping as personal records. The recordings showed not just cooking lessons but also showed Zixthera and Velandra singing while they worked. The aliens were clearly happier and healthier than when they had arrived. Judge Calthanus reviewed all the evidence with his investigation team. Lisa was formally arrested and charged with cultural contamination. The aliens were declared corrupted and marked for immediate return to their home world for decontamination procedures. The charges against Lisa were serious enough to warrant a full galactic trial. Captain Amy tried to intervene, but was warned that she could face court-martial for allowing the contamination to occur. Dr. Sullivan was placed under investigation for failing to report the cultural violations. Lisa was confined to quarters under guard, While the investigation team prepared their report, she was allowed one final meeting with Zix, Thara, and Velandra before they were taken away. The aliens were clearly frightened about returning to their home world. "We will not forget what you taught us," Zix, Thara said quietly, while the guards were not listening. "Your kindness has shown us what we have lost," Vel. Andra added that they would try to remember the recipes and cooking techniques. Even if their people tried to make them forget, the aliens hugged Lisa goodbye, knowing they might never see her again. As of Lisa's arrest spread quickly through human space colonies, the story of a scientist who was being prosecuted for making soup for hungry aliens captured public attention. People began asking why helping others was considered a crime. Human colonies started organizing protests against the Cultural Preservation Court. They argued that the law was being used to suppress natural compassion and cooperation between species. The protests grew larger as more people learned about Lisa's case. The government officially requested the return of their corrupted citizens. They claimed that Zix, Thara, and Velandra had been damaged by exposure to primitive human practices and needed to be rehabilitated. The aliens would face memory adjustment. To remove their knowledge of cooking, Judge Kell Thanos announced that Lisa's trial would be held at the Galactic Council headquarters and would be broadcast throughout known space. The case had become a test of the cultural preservation laws, and their enforcement agent Martinez sealed all the evidence from New Horizon and prepared her prosecution case. She had recordings, video evidence, and physical proof of cultural contamination. The case against Lisa seemed impossible to defend. Captain Amy sent urgent messages to Earth, requesting legal support for Lisa. But the human government was reluctant to challenge the Galactic Council over what many officials considered a minor incident. The political implications were complex and dangerous. Lisa spent her last night on New Horizon, looking out at the stars and thinking about her grandmother. She wondered what the old woman would think about her granddaughter being arrested for making soup. She decided that her grandmother would be proud. Investigation team prepared to transport Lisa to the galactic capital for trial. Judge Calthanis had already decided that this case would send a clear message to anyone who might consider violating cultural preservation laws. But as their ship prepared to depart, something unexpected happened. Other alien species began coming forward with their own stories of lost cultural practices. The galaxy was about to learn that the Cultural Preservation Court had been hiding much more than anyone suspected. The trial would become much more than a simple case about soup. It would become a revolution that would change the galaxy forever. The Galactic Council headquarters was a massive structure that orbited the neutral world of Centauri. Prime Lisa had never seen anything so impressive and intimidating. The building housed representatives from hundreds of alien species and made decisions that affected trillions of beings across the galaxy. Lisa sat in a holding cell waiting for her trial to begin. She wore simple prison clothes and had been stripped of all her personal belongings. The cell was comfortable but sterile, reminding her constantly that she was now a criminal in the eyes of Galactic Law. Ambassador Grace Park arrived from Earth to serve as Lisa's diplomatic representative. She was a small woman with gray hair and kind eyes, but Lisa could see the worry in her expression. The ambassador had dealt with many complex cases, but nothing quite like this. "The charges against you are very serious," Grace explained during their first meeting. "Cultural contamination is considered one of the worst crimes in galactic law. The prosecution has video evidence and witness testimony. You could face memory adjustment or exile to an uninhabited world." Lisa understood the gravity of her situation, but she refused to feel guilty about helping Zix, Thara, and Velandra. The aliens had been sick and hungry, and she had done what any decent person would do. She would face the consequences without regret. The trial was scheduled to be broadcast live throughout the galaxy. Because of the intense public interest, human colonies had been organizing protests, and other species were beginning to ask questions about the cultural preservation laws. The case had become a symbol of something much larger. Lieutenant Dana Foster was assigned as the military prosecutor, and she had built her career on enforcing galactic law. She was young and ambitious, and saw Lisa's case as an opportunity to prove herself to the council. She had prepared meticulously and seemed confident of victory. The trial began in the Great Hall of the Council building. Judge Kelthonis presided over a panel of 12 judges representing different alien species. The courtroom was packed with observers from across the galaxy, and the atmosphere was tense with anticipation. Lieutenant Foster presented her case with precision and authority. She showed the video evidence of Lisa teaching cooking techniques to the aliens. She presented the modified kitchen equipment and the alien-compatible ingredients. The evidence was overwhelming and undeniable. This case represents a clear violation of our most fundamental laws, Foster declared, addressing the panel of judges. Cultural contamination threatens the natural development of all species. Dr. Carter has corrupted 2 members of a protected alien race with primitive human practices. The prosecution called Dr. Nina Wright as an expert witness. The anthropologist testified about the dangers of cultural sharing between species. She explained how exposure to foreign practices could damage the natural evolution of alien societies. But when the defense began their case, something unexpected happened. Ambassador Park called Dr. Kate Sullivan as their first witness. The medical officer presented detailed evidence about the physical and mental health improvements in both aliens. The accused aliens were suffering from severe malnutrition when they arrived. Dr. Sullivan testified their recovery was remarkable after they began eating prepared food. Their mental state also improved dramatically, showing increased emotional range and social interaction. The defense team had also gathered character witnesses from New Horizon. Captain Amy Brooks testified about Lisa's dedication to her work and her compassion for all living beings. Dr. Rose Hamilton spoke about how the aliens had transformed from withdrawn and sad to happy and engaged. Then Ambassador Park made a move that surprised everyone in the courtroom. She called Zix Thera and Vel Endra as witnesses for the defense. The aliens had been held in custody since their arrest, but they were allowed to testify about their experiences. Thera took the witness stand with dignity and grace, despite the circumstances. She spoke clearly through the universal translator about her condition when she arrived at New Horizon, and how Lisa had saved her life. Faye was dying, she testified simply. Dr. Carter gave me food that restored my health and my hope. She showed us that eating could be more than just survival. It could be pleasure and connection. Val Andra testified about learning to cook and how it had awakened something in her that she had not known was missing. She described the joy of creating something beautiful and nourishing with her own hands. The prosecution objected that the aliens had been corrupted and could not give reliable testimony. But their words were so sincere and powerful that the courtroom was completely silent when they finished speaking. Then Ambassador Park dropped her biggest surprise. She called an elderly Kitharian named Kethmira, who had been living in exile for over 200 years. The old alien had been banished from Kitharos for refusing to give up traditional practices. Kethmira took the stand slowly, supported by a walking stick. Her presence caused a stir in the courtroom, because most people believed that all traditional Kitharians had died out centuries ago. I am one of the last who remembers the old ways, Kethmira said, in a voice that carried the weight of centuries. Our people once created beautiful food and sang while we worked. We had festivals and celebrations centered around cooking and sharing meals. The old alien described how the Cultural Preservation Court had forced her people to abandon their traditions in the name of efficiency. She told the court that thousands of Kitharians had been exiled or had their memories adjusted for refusing to give up their cultural practices. Lieutenant Foster tried to object, but Judge Kelthonis allowed Kethmira to continue. The old alien's testimony was revealing information that the council had kept hidden for generations. Other species began coming forward with similar stories. A delegation of aquatic beings testified that they had been forced to give up their water dancing traditions. A group of silicon-based life forms revealed that their crystalline music had been banned as primitive. The trial was becoming much more than a case about cultural contamination. It was exposing a systematic campaign by the Cultural Preservation Court to suppress the cultural practices of alien species. Across the galaxy, Ambassador Park presented evidence that the court had been selectively enforcing the laws. They had targeted species that they considered primitive, while allowing more advanced races to maintain their traditions. The system was corrupt and discriminatory. The courtroom erupted in chaos as representatives from dozens of species began demanding answers. Judge Kelthanis called for order, but could not control the growing anger and confusion among the observers. Lisa watched in amazement as her simple act of kindness had revealed a galactic conspiracy she had never imagined, that making soup for hungry aliens would expose centuries of cultural oppression. Prosecution case began to fall apart as more evidence emerged. Lieutenant Foster tried to maintain that Lisa had broken the law, regardless of the larger issues, but public opinion was turning strongly against the Cultural Preservation Court. News of the revelations spread quickly across the galaxy. Human colonies increased their protests, and other species began organizing their own demonstrations. The trial had become a rallying point for cultural freedom. On the final day of testimony, Ambassador Park called Lisa herself to the witness stand. Lisa spoke simply and honestly about why she had helped the aliens and what she had learned from them. I saw two beings who were suffering, and I did what my grandmother taught me to do, Lisa said. Facing the panel of judges, I shared food and comfort with those who needed it. If that is a crime, then I am guilty. The judges deliberated for 3 days, while protests continued to grow outside the courthouse. When they returned, Judge Kelthanis looked tired and conflicted as he prepared to announce the verdict. The court finds Dr. Lisa Carter guilty of cultural contamination, he said, but his voice lacked conviction. However, the court also finds that the cultural preservation laws have been applied in a discriminatory and oppressive manner. The mixed verdict satisfied no one. Lisa was sentenced to 5 years exile, but the sentence was suspended pending appeals. The real victory was that the trial had exposed the corruption of the cultural preservation court. As Lisa was led from the courtroom, she saw Zix, Thora, and Velandra in the audience. Both aliens were crying, but they were also smiling. They knew that their testimony had helped start something that would change the galaxy. The revolution had begun, and it started with a simple bowl of chicken soup. The guilty verdict against Lisa Carter sent shockwaves across the galaxy that nobody had expected. Within hours of the announcement, human colonies began declaring independence from the cultural preservation laws. The protests that had started small grew into massive demonstrations involving millions of beings. Senator Holly Chen led the human resistance movement from her base on Mars colony. She had been following Lisa's case closely and recognized that this was a moment that could change galactic history. The senator organized a coalition of human worlds that refused to recognize the authority of the Cultural Preservation Court. But humans were not alone in their rebellion. Species after species came forward with stories of lost traditions and suppressed cultures. The aquatic dancers of Rigel 7 began performing their forbidden water ballets in public squares. The crystal singers of Alpha Centauri started broadcasting their outlawed music across the galaxies. Xthera and Vel Andra became unexpected leaders of the Catherian resistance movement. When they returned to their home world, they found thousands of young Catherians who were hungry for the traditions their ancestors had been forced to abandon. The two aliens began teaching cooking in secret, gathering followers who were eager to learn. The Catherian government tried to arrest them, but the protests grew too large to control. Videos of Catherians cooking and singing together spread across their world faster than the authorities could stop them. The gray paste that had sustained their people for centuries was abandoned. As families rediscovered the joy of preparing real food, Lisa remained in custody during the appeals process, but her case had become a symbol of resistance against cultural oppression. Ambassador Grace Park worked tirelessly to build legal challenges to the cultural preservation laws while the galaxy erupted in revolution. Around them, Judge Kelthanis found himself in an impossible position. The trial had revealed corruption that went to the highest levels of the Galactic Council, but he was part of the system that had created the problem. Council member after council member was exposed as having selectively enforced laws to maintain their own power. reformed council member named Czar, Vec emerged as an unlikely ally for the revolution. The insectoid being had initially supported the cultural preservation laws, but the evidence presented during Lisa's trial had changed. His mind, he began working to expose more corruption within the council. The revolution reached a turning point when Captain Amy Brooks arrived at the galactic capital with a ship full of evidence she had spent months gathering testimony from species across the galaxy about cultural suppression practices. The evidence showed a pattern of systematic oppression that could no longer be denied. Alice Reynolds arrived from Earth to establish the first interspecies culinary academy in defiance of galactic law. She set up operations on a neutral space station and began accepting students from every species willing to share their food traditions. The academy became a symbol of cultural freedom. The old Galactic Council began to collapse. As member species withdrew their support, the Cultural Preservation Court lost legitimacy when it was revealed that many judges had been taking bribes to enforce laws selectively. Several high-ranking officials, including Judge Calfanis, resigned. In disgrace, Lisa was finally released from custody when the appeals court ruled that the cultural preservation laws were unconstitutional. The decision was celebrated across the galaxy as a victory for cultural freedom and cooperation between species. First thing Lisa did after her release was return to New Horizon, where she was welcomed as a hero. Captain Amy Brooks had prepared a feast using recipes from dozens of different species. The station had become an informal embassy for cultural exchange. Thera and Vel Andra arrived at New Horizon, leading a delegation of young Catherians who wanted to learn about food traditions from other species. Lisa was amazed to see how much they had changed. They were confident leaders who had helped transform their entire world. Lisa established her academy on New Horizon, where she began teaching cooking techniques to students from across the galaxy. The simple kitchen where she had first made soup for hungry aliens became a classroom where dozens of species learned to prepare food together. The revolution had succeeded beyond anyone's wildest expectations. A new galactic council was formed with cultural freedom as one of its fundamental principles. The cultural preservation laws were replaced with cultural exchange protocols that encouraged sharing between species. Senator Holly Chen was elected as the first human representative to the reformed council. Her experience leading the resistance movement made her a natural choice for helping to write the new laws that would govern cultural interaction. Alice Reynolds expanded her academy into a network of schools across the galaxy. Each academy specialized in the food traditions of different species, but all shared the fundamental principle that culture was meant to be celebrated and shared, not hidden and suppressed. Lisa found herself in the strange position of being famous throughout the galaxy for making soup her grandmother's recipe had been adapted for hundreds of different species and had become a symbol of the cultural revolution that had transformed galactic society. The chicken soup recipe evolved as different species added their own ingredients and techniques. Aquatic beings made a version with kelp and sea vegetables. Silicon-based life forms created a crystalline broth that sang while it cooked. The variations were endless, and each one honored the original spirit of comfort and carriers. Later, Lisa stood in her classroom watching students from 12 different species working together to prepare a meal. The kitchen was filled with laughter and singing as beings who had once been enemies learned to create something beautiful together. She thought about her grandmother and how proud the old woman would be to know that her simple recipe had helped bring peace to the galaxy. Food had indeed proven to be a universal language that could bridge any cultural divides. Thera and Valandra had become ambassadors for cultural exchange, traveling from world to world, teaching, cooking, and learning new traditions. They carried with them the message that sharing culture made everyone stronger, not weaker. The galaxy had learned that diversity was not a threat to be controlled, but a treasure to be celebrated. The cultural preservation laws had been based on fear, but the new age was built on hope and cooperation. Lisa often received messages from beings across the galaxy telling her how food had brought their families and communities together. The revolution had started with one act of kindness, but it had grown into a transformation that touched every corner of known space. As she watched her students work together, Lisa reflected on how far they had all come. A simple bowl of chicken soup had become the catalyst for the greatest social change in galactic history. The universe was a better place because someone had chosen compassion over rules. The revolution was complete, but the real work was just beginning. Every meal prepared with love, every recipe shared between species, and every tradition passed to the next generation was a victory against the forces that wanted to keep beings apart. Lisa smiled as she tasted a new soup creation that combined ingredients from 8 different worlds. It was delicious, and it represented everything the revolution had accomplished. The galaxy had learned that the best way to preserve culture was to share it freely with others. The stars looked brighter now that the galaxy was united, not by force or law, but by the simple act of breaking bread together. The revolution had succeeded, and the universe would never be the same.